from Garrett over at Blackwater. I realized that we've been talking a bit about Blackwater conditions, but we haven't been talking about a core part of how you can create a Blackwater aquarium, and that is adding your own aquatic botanicals, which is a really fancy way of saying sticks and leaves and bark. So we're going to take a look at a couple of the homegrown methods that I use. So I use a lot of found items, I use a lot of stuff that's just kind of in my yard, and I also grow some of my own plants, exotic plants that aren't normally found around here, so that I can create my own kind of semi-realistic jungle experience in the leaf litter that's on the bottom of my aquariums. So let's take a quick look at what I've all got on offer. So one of the first questions that I get a lot from a lot of people who are trying to start their own Blackwater aquariums is what can I use and what can't I use or shouldn't I use in my aquarium? So I'm going to talk a little bit about, you know what, let's start with what we shouldn't use, because it's probably more important than what you can use. Just, you know, to maintain the health of your aquarium, your beneficial bacteria, and of course your fish and invertebrates that you're keeping in there. So things that I wouldn't recommend using, any plant that you buy from a big box store, at least for the first few months of its life. Reason for this is a lot of these stores will treat a lot of these plants just so they're pest-free, weed-free. They'll spray them with chemicals, they'll spray them with fertilizers, and these are all things that you don't really want in your aquarium. So first thing you should do if you do buy plants there, because that's probably your only source of finding tropical plants unless you happen to be lucky enough to live in an equatorial tropical zone. So first thing you should do when you bring them home, give them a shower. Put them in your bathtub, put them in your sink, hose them down, get whatever's going on off the leaves, give the roots a good soaking, and then let it grow out. Let it grow out for a month or two. The longer the better, but really giving it a good shower will flush most of these damaging things out of its system. And then you're just kind of waiting for it to grow and waiting for it to shed leaves. Something else that you shouldn't use in your aquarium, anything with a hollow stem. Now this is kind of more of an aesthetic thing than anything, but hollow stems, this is a fern that I got out of my front yard, and this is when it goes dormant for winter. So during the summer you get these nice lacy looking leaves. You drop them in your aquarium, they sink, they look really prehistoric, but the stems will float. And now that can be a good thing or a bad thing. For most of us it will be a bad thing. This particular fern that I have, I don't know the specific species, but all the leaves you can see here, they harden up to little husks, and those will float for months and months. I've had some floating around for almost a year, and you just kind of eventually get tired of it, tired of picking it off your filter output and all that. Second thing that I will point out here, you might not be able to see it, but there's bird poop on there. Don't put anything with animal waste on it in your aquarium. You can bypass that by rinsing these things, but that's definitely something you want to avoid. Other plants that you should avoid using, coniferous trees of any kind. Those have sugary sap, they're very acidic, they're plants that have developed in their own way a mechanism to thrive and survive in forests where there's heavy competition. They drop acidic needles on the ground, they grow very bushy to block out the light, and but primarily it's these acidic needles that you need to look out for, especially in an unbuffered system where you're using RO or partial RO water. That's something that you're gonna really have problems with. I think it would be interesting to do a pine branch aquarium, but I don't know if I'd do it with fish in it without rigorous testing first, because that would wreak havoc with your pH level and your hardness levels. Other plants, succulents of any kind, cactus, cacti, no, just no, don't do it. Anything that hasn't been cured, so that's anything that still has sap running in it, where the leaves are still flexible rather than crunchy. It's really difficult to try and maintain aquarium parameters if you've got live material such as that, or semi-live material. So watch out for that. Make sure everything's cured properly. Some leaves take days, some leaves take weeks, some leaves take months. I'll show you. I don't even know what this plant is, so that's something else. If you don't know what it is, don't use it. But I'm using this. It's a strange little plant. Might even be a succulent. So if you know what this is, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to have a name for it. But it grows and it drops leaves really slowly, usually whenever you change up the lighting parameters. So this is a freshly dropped leaf. You can see it's still nice and flexible. It's got the stem attached. The stem takes a long time to dry out on these, so I usually clip that off so that dries out faster, but these will take probably close to a month to cure properly. Well, when it does, it looks like this. Look at that. That's quite lovely. You can hear it's crispy, and this is perfectly usable in your aquarium now that it's lost all of the moisture and the sap that's inside of it. Other good reason to dry it out, maybe the sap is toxic. So if we're talking about something like poison ivy, for sure, don't put that in your aquarium. I wouldn't even put it in there dry. That just seems ridiculous. Poison ivy, poison oak, toxic plants like that. Lesser known toxic plants. This is from a peace lily. I love this. Look how big that is. It's huge. I can hide behind it. Peace lilies, when they're alive, they're actually toxic to consume. Usually more of a concern for your pets in your house, like your dog or your cat. If they decide to have a snack, that can make them very sick. But once it's completely dried out, like this guy, you can also hear how crispy that guy is, then it's perfectly usable in your aquarium. These look great, but they don't have much of a structure to them. So they only last a couple of days before they totally break down, and then you've just got the stem sitting in there, which is fine. It's a really fast way to load your aquarium with decomposed botanical material. So if you've got soft leaves, thin leaves like that, those break down really quickly. So if you really want to get that initial dose of mulm and leaf litter in there, those are a great way to start it out. So what can you use in your aquarium? Well, let's start with the biggest one that almost every aquarist has in their aquarium, whether they've just got plastic plants or whatever. Wood. This isn't a very impressive piece of wood. This is just a stick that came out of my yard. But you can use branches that you find in your yard, deadfall, stuff that's died, stuff that you trim back and let cure for 6 months. All of that can be used. My 30-gallon aquarium has got a big old stump, which looks great. It's a great character piece, even though it's mostly covered in algae and hornwort right now. But wood is a big one. Wood's great for tinting as well, or bad for tinting if you don't want that yellow look to your water. But we're here for Blackwater, so let's be honest. That's what's going on. So you get a lot of people complaining about, oh no, my wood, I put it in my water, it's turning yellow. And it keeps doing this for weeks, it keeps doing this for months. What do? I've boiled it, everything. Embrace it. If you don't want to tint, don't put wood in your water. Some wood is more tint heavy than others, so you'll kind of have to experiment. I'm sure you can just take a look online and you'll find, even if you say tinting problems, you can find easily different kinds of wood that'll tint it. The stuff that I use, I honestly don't even know what this stump is from. I'm going to assume it was elm, because that's predominantly planted in our neighborhood, but that actually, it leached really heavily for the first few weeks, and actually gave this beautiful reddish hue to the water. So wood is one of your most potent tinting agents, and one of the longest lasting as well. It takes a long time to break down. Sticks will break down a little bit faster, or at least fall apart. Larger pieces of wood will take, I would say, years, and can be easily replenished. The bigger the piece, the harder it is to sink it, the longer it'll take. So you can hasten it by boiling it, but for the most part, it's just throw it in there. Even throw it in a bucket of water in your basement or whatever, and just let it soak for a while, and then when it sinks, throw it in your aquarium. You can also weight it down by attaching it to a piece of slate or even a piece of plastic and then covering that with sand. So lots of ways to use wood in your aquarium. Another one that's really fun, if you happen to have it on your yard, is vines. We have some creeper vines. I don't have any examples right now. Best time to harvest it is in fall and spring when the vines are still dead. and they give these really cool little corkscrews that add some great atmosphere to your aquarium. Bark. This is a piece of bark that I've had in my aquarium for, I would say, close to a year, possibly longer. It's a little flappy, but still holding the same basic shape. Once again, another powerful tinting agent. You want to be really sure that you wash this or boil it to prepare it, just because it's got all the little crevices and stuff, but that will be a really potent tinting agent. And because it is so durable and has such a firm structure, if you get the right piece, you can build really cool little caves and layered areas for, your shrimp can go hide out in there. My coolies have their own little bark cave, which they love. They go in there and they just snuggle up. So bark, really good. Leaves. This is an oak leaf. I've used many leaves, different kinds of leaves. Some of them I just, grab off of a hedge as I'm going by. Please don't go onto people's property to get leaves, unless you ask them first. If you go to a nature preserve or a park, maybe leave those there. A, because you don't know whether they've been sprayed with anything, and B, take only pictures, leave only footprints, right? We're trying to create nature in our aquarium. I realize that it's very detached from the actual thing. Let's do our best to lessen the impact on the environment. Oak leaves are really good. They're kind of the DIYers equivalent of catappa leaves. They are very durable. They've got an interesting shape. If you don't want to look like an oak leaf, I always trim off the feathery parts on the outside, and you get this nice little narrow looking leaf that looks a bit more exotic, and then the rest of it that you trimmed off, you just crush it up, throw it in your aquarium, and then you get instant tint. It's long lasting. It's one of the most powerful tinting trees, at least available in North America. A couple of exotic plants that I grow on my own. This one right up here in front with the interesting yellow and red veins, that's a Croton plant. I don't recall where we got this, but we've had it for a while, and it doesn't shed very often, but when it does, it sheds these leaves. This one is actually just freshly knocked off from me putting it on the table here, and they are very rigid. Take a while to cure, but definitely take a while to break down in your aquarium and look really cool. Behind it, we already talked about my succulent. This here is a dragon tree. I don't know if you can see it from there. Get out of here. So this is the dragon tree. These are very common. I believe this one came from, I actually don't know, IKEA. They're very long-lived. They'll grow up into these interesting spindly forms. Some friends of ours have one that I think is 10 or 15 years old, and it's about 4 feet high. So it doesn't grow as fast as in the tropics, but it does grow, and it sheds these lovely little leaves that are kind of reddish gold. And they make for really cool looking, like they go in and they saturate and then they kind of drape themselves over everything, and it's kind of a different look to the more common leaf-shaped leaves. So if you can get one of these, they're great, I think. Get a couple actually, and then you've always got a constant supply of interesting looking tropical leaves. Just keep it away from your cats rather. Other plants that I've used, this is an umbrella tree. These are very easy to maintain, and depending on where they are, they shed a lot. So you get this really nice looking leaf. I haven't personally seen any mangrove leaves up close, but if you're looking for a brackish look or just need another rigid, tough leaf, this is the one for you. They don't shed often. Mine's shedding a bit more now because of changing light source, because of spring is coming and all that, so it's just kind of optimizing itself. But super easy to maintain, super common to find. And makes for a very durable bit of leaf litter. This is kind of what it looks like once it dries out. So it's a bit crispier, a lot thinner, but it should last at least a week or two in your aquarium. Behind it we have a lemon tree. No lemons yet, but really interesting leaves. Ones that get very durable, and they shed them occasionally. This one hasn't in a while actually, but if you prune them back, just be careful for the branches, because they grow these really long, probably can't see them from there, but really long thorns, which could potentially damage your fish if they're swimming around and just happen to get startled into it. But yeah, that's really cool. You can grow it at home. Just buy a lemon, take the seeds, try and grow it. I think it's like a 25% success rate, but I planted 4 seeds and got 4 plants out of it. So, you know, maybe you get lucky. Cones and pods, those are something, they're a little bit more exotic, but if you're in a temperate zone, you can find probably birch cones, alder cones, even pine cones. Be cautious with those, once again, because of the acid. But cones are a great way to add tint. Shrimp love it because they build up a lot of biofilm, so the shrimp just get right on in there inside the seeds and go to town. It's a great source of food. If you're using unbuffered water, you can kind of drop the pH with them, using them in larger quantities, like 10 to 20 per 10 gallons kind of thing. But once again, just be careful, monitor your parameters, and don't let things get out of hand. Don't add things too fast. So how do you prepare your homegrown or home-found botanicals? Same as you prepare anything that you might purchase at the store. Give them a good rinse at minimum. Giving them a boil is even better. You can keep the water that's left over, save it for a Blackwater extract if that's your thing. A bit of a concentrated dose to get the tint going on really fast. But I would almost recommend discarding that, because that's where all the soil and the impurities, environmental contaminants, those are all very concentrated in that water. So it might also depend on how hardy your fish are, or even the quality of what you found, right? If you found it out in the middle of the woods with nothing around, maybe it's probably pretty safe to say that it won't be that contaminated, but it's best to err on the side of caution. Boiling it also has the other nice side effect of causing it to sink faster. So if you just rinse it, I usually just rinse mine, and they float around for a bit, which is actually kind of interesting depending on the fish you keep. My betta loved it. He would build bubble nests under the leaves. My coolies loved it. They would swim up and kind of use it as a hammock and explore, so you'd always see their silhouettes up under the light there. But if you don't have antibiotics or anything like that would find floating cover interesting, or you don't want to deal with it kind of getting sucked into your filter intake, if you boil them, that's a great way to cause them to sink. So you've got your botanicals, everything's prepared. You've given them a soak, given them a rinse, given them a boil. How much do you add, and how fast do you add it? That's really up to you. You know your tank better than anyone. Just use your gut and be smart about it, right? Start with maybe, a couple of leaves once a week, or whenever you do your water change. If that's getting you what you want, you're good. If it's not getting you dark enough, start adding them more. Start adding them, every 2 to 3 days. Add another couple of leaves, and just slowly build it up. Let your biofiltration give it a chance to catch up, and just make sure that things are, everybody's looking happy, everybody's looking healthy. It's not all about the tint, it's also about the health of your fish. So use your gut, use your best judgment, keep testing that water, and just be a little cautious. Better to err on the side of caution than to go crazy. I did go crazy in one of my tanks a while back. It was autumn, everything was brown. Threw a bunch of leaves in, and it stank like a swamp in that tank. Everybody was fine, because they were all kind of stagnant pond fishes, but it stank like a pond in my house for, I would say, at least 2 weeks, even with daily water changes. So make sure that everything's dried out, make sure that everything's being prepped, and don't add it too fast, because you don't want a stanky swamp in your house. Something else that I wanted to add too is that biofilm is going to accumulate on any aquatic botanical that you throw in there. So that'll look, all really depends on what's in there. But it could be filmy bubbles, it could be algae, it could be kind of a furry look. And you're going to get this stuff, and it's going to look nasty. And if you're not used to it either, you're going to be like, what's going on with my tank? What's wrong with it? I say embrace it. This is all going to be food for microfauna, going to be food for invertebrates like shrimp and snails, and it's going to just add to the overall biodiversity of your tank. And so I say just embrace it. It's going to look gross. Often it will burn itself out, especially with a new tank setup. Within the first 6 weeks, all of that stuff will kind of iron itself out, and you'll have a fairly normal looking tank once it strikes that balance. So biofilm happens. Learn to love it. It's great. I love it. Well, I hope that was very informative. I hope that you learned at least a little bit here. I hope that this is going to encourage you to get out there and make your own homegrown Aquatic Botanicals if you can't afford or can't source them from online vendors and that kind of thing. And feel free to do some experimentation. Be cautious, but try it out. See what kind of cool looks you can get with different kind of leaves. See what kind of leaf litter you can build, and just have fun with it. It's a great and free way to make your aquarium look a little bit more exotic and a little bit less like everyone else's. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.